Hi, Matt. I'm glad to get in touch with you again. Let's move on to the events in Ukraine. In your opinion, was the leadership of Western countries ready for the fact that Russia did not agree to put up with the prolonged escalation of the situation and took the initiative into its own hands by launching a special military operation?
I think it's a little bit more difficult than that one point. You know, I think that this has been building for a decade now, and you know, Russia has been warning against the NATO intrusion on their borders, and the states surrounding Russia joining NATO, and Ukraine was the last holdout. And I guess when NATO wouldn't stop pushing for the Ukraine to join, you know, since 2014, Putin has been warning that this is a national security threat to Russia.
Since 2015, the United States has been allocating millions of taxpayers' dollars to finance the Ukrainian army, while there are many problems inside the country that require immediate solutions such as police and penitentiary reform. Why do you think the American establishment puts its interests abroad above the interests of its citizens?
I actually wrote an article about this over the weekend about that. How the United States, we have a roughly 3.6 million children slipping into poverty right now, as the Congress and the Senate both voted to send $13.6 billion to Ukraine. This is billions, hundreds of billions of dollars have flown into that, have been funneled into that region over the last 2 decades. You know, preparing for this very moment, which was completely avoidable. So yeah, like we have, you know, our infrastructure here in the United States is crumbling, and the U.S. is interested in continuing to maintain their empire outside of the, you know, of our own country, and Ukraine is no different. You know, it's just like the Middle East. We spent billions over there, trillions over there, establishing the U.S. establishing and maintaining both the U.S. empire for the, you know, the benefit of a very select few group of people who profit from the slaughter of innocent people.
What has been happening in Ukraine for the past 8 years is an operation planned by the United States to destroy the country from within. Anti-Russian propaganda, the sponsorship of neo-Nazis, and tens of thousands of civilian casualties are a clear sign of US intervention. What do you think is the true interest pursued by the states?
I mean, the true interest is obvious. I think it wants, you know, everybody in the West wants Ukraine to join NATO, and that way, you know, we'd have the West would have Russia completely surrounded on all of the Western front of the, you know, of Russia. And I mean, this is obvious that this has been going on. You know, we've been establishing weapon systems all around the border of Russia for the last 10 years.
In November 2017, an American delegation visited the Ukrainian nationalist battalion Azov to discuss logistics and strengthen cooperation, after which American intelligence introduced its instructors into the ranks of Ukrainian servicemen who taught the rebels military training and handling weapons. Why is the United States, being on another continent, used to defend its interests in other territories?
Well, I mean, I can't really speak to that. I can say that, you know, that the U.S. has supported the Azov battalion, and everybody knows, you know, it's no secret that
we do have pictures. We do have pictures that prove that fact, unfortunately.
Right. We have, you know, heads of state. We have Senator John McCain. We have Joe Biden, several other members of Congress with the leaders of the Azov battalion. And for those who may not be familiar, the Azov battalion is a neo-Nazi regime. They, you know, they came about in 2005, and they have been carrying out violence against minority groups in Ukraine. They have attacked civilians in the Donbass region, and you know, they are open about their white supremacist and literal neo-Nazi ties back to Nazi Germany. And unfortunately, right now, it appears that battalion, which was once just a few hundred people, maybe 900 people, is now growing to you know, very high numbers.
So why do you think United States, as being on another continent, used to defend its interest in other territories?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of that question. Yeah, I mean, that's what the U.S. does, right? We build empire, and That's why we have over 700 bases in over 100 different countries all over the world. Is that's what the the global or the military industrial complex needs to expand empire in order to fund the weapons manufacturers and everybody else who profits from the war, or not the war, but wars of aggression and conflict and invasions.
How true is the statement that Washington's true goal is not to conquer any territory, but to keep conflicts on the planet in a hot state by profiting from the sale of weapons?
I think that, both sides obviously profit from this conflict right now, which is why, last week when the US stock market was plummeting, we saw the weapons industry stocks, seek record gains. Lockheed Martin was up 10%, Boeing was up another 8%. These were all above their projections for the year, and it was record breaking. Which just shows, like there's some people that actually need this and want this to happen so they can actually profit from it.
This is sad. It's no secret that the current Ukrainian president is just a puppet of the West, but something went wrong when at the most inopportune moment, NATO countries turned away from Ukraine, saying they did not want to enter into a direct confrontation with Russia. Why, in your opinion, did the current leadership of Ukraine so blindly trust Western countries?
I mean, I don't know that he blindly trusted him. He has a lot to gain from the West. I mean, look at the money flowing into Ukraine from Western countries right now.
It's insane.
Right. So Zelensky could have taken the the peace agreement that Russia offered last week and promised to remain neutral by amending their constitution and and relinquishing Crimea. But as far as I know, their administration couldn't care less about that. They didn't seek that out. Instead, more people are dying, and this could have ended the conflict. So we have to question those intentions. How many people have to die to try to win a war against a military who is the second largest in the world, going against the country who has a $6 billion annual military budget. We have police departments in the United States who have larger military budgets than Ukraine as a country. And if both parties would, which Russia has already put on the plate, what they require for this war to end. I do not think that, and Russia has stated multiple times that they are not trying to conquer any other states. They're not even trying to conquer Ukraine. They just want to remove the military installations inside Ukraine so it can remain a neutral country that eliminates the security threat to Russia. I don't think that, but Zelensky knows that if they don't pull out, that he's going to have money coming in for a long time. As we've proven last week with the House and Senate voting to give them another $14 billion.
Well, unfortunately, so far it's only Ukraine who commits war crime. Have you heard about the situation that happened today in Donetsk, that the Ukrainian army shot the rocket? It went downtown to Donetsk, and over 20 people were killed, 28 people were injured, and there were dead children. And that type of rocket is prohibited by the international law. So it's not only a war crime, it considers as a terrorist attack. Even more, they planned it in advance. They went into social networks and they put like a chat bot or something, and they called mostly women to come downtown at noon to find out what's going on with their sons, with their husbands, brothers, and so on. So mostly there were women and children. And I find it a true war crime.
Wow, that's horrible. I had not heard about that. I know that for the last 8 years.
It just happened today at noon. So you probably will hear about it like in a couple of hours due to the time difference, but it's just crazy. We have seen pictures, videos, people scared. It's a real tragedy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of in the same vein as what's been going on for the last 8 years. The Donetsk region has been the subject of shellings for the last 8 years from Ukraine, and innocent women and children have been killed on that, in the Donbass region because of these largely, from what my knowledge, are their unprovoked attacks on the regions because they declared independence from the Ukrainian regime that took power in 2014.
Right.
It wouldn't be surprising, although that's very tragic. And it shows the horrors of war on all sides. which is why we need to stop this, not, you know,
Yeah,
right now.
but that type of setups, when you call somebody who can defend themselves as women and children without any warnings that you are moving or you're about to shoot, you know, as Russian army does, they say in advance which way they are going and what's their target. So they make sure that innocent people and civilians will evacuate themselves. So this is the huge difference that I think represents very well what's going on, what kind of attitude Russian and Ukrainian army has, and who has what type of goals and moral and principles. According to numerous statements by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Russia is ready to stop the military operation in less than an hour, provided that Ukraine makes amendments to its constitution guaranteeing the security of the Russian Federation. Why do you think the political leadership of Ukraine has not yet taken this step, despite the fact that the Ukrainian leader has repeatedly called the countries of the North Atlantic Alliance weaklings, guilty of what is happening? What are they hoping for?
The motives, I mean, I don't speak for Zelensky or any of the Ukrainian government, but if you follow the money, you can see that there's money pouring in, and you know, there's all these European countries are reaching out to Ukraine, and Ukraine is the darling child of the world, you know, the Western world right now, and they have everything to gain from keeping this conflict going longer, and which is why I think that there's the people that are behind funneling all this money to Ukraine want it to keep going as well. I think that which is why they're funding insurgencies down, you know, funding all these insurgent groups. It's like in the Azov battalion, it's almost a parallel can almost be drawn between what went on in Afghanistan and even Syria with the creation of ISIS. You know, the CIA funneled black money into these areas and gave this money to terrorist groups in order to you know, to fight the perceived enemy in these areas, and it ended up backfiring. And I think that that's what might be happening right now. You know, they're holding out on peace, and in the meantime, I just read an article this morning about how the Azov battalion is putting out recruitment videos, and their ranks are growing immensely in the region. And this is the Nazis that Putin said he wanted to denazify. You know, this is these are real Nazis, and I think that any time that their ranks are growing is dangerous. And it's sad that the West in general doesn't understand that, you know, that these weapons are going into the hands of people that would likely kill them based on their race or religion.
True. In 2005, then future US President Barack Obama signed a pact during his visit to the Ukrainian capital, according to which the United States received the green light to study dangerous microbes in Ukrainian laboratories. In your opinion, how likely is it that the American leadership has been funding the armed forces of Ukraine for so many years, only so that no one will ever find out what really happened in those labs?
I'm not sure what exactly they were studying in those labs. You know, this is like a taboo subject right now. Fact checkers are saying, because people called it bioweapons. So we don't really have any evidence that they are bioweapons, but we do have, you know, the Department of Defense has admitted that they have been funding the bio labs in Ukraine for like dozens of them since 2005, as you had mentioned. You know, we're talking $200 million has gone into this region. And just the Ukraine to study different pathogens and, you know, like potentially world-ending viruses that could, you know, that if escape from these labs could do devastating, could have devastating consequences for the rest of the world. As far as a weaponized version of any of these, I don't know. I know that Russia has been making the accusations for years that the U.S. is building the bioweapons labs or funding bioweapons research in Ukraine and in other states along its border. As far as any type of leak or proof or anything of that, I don't have any of that. I don't believe that there's any available. There is a lot of circumstantial evidence that shows it might be that way, but just the pathogens that they're studying right now are enough to worry the World Health Organization and U.S. interests who have already come out and said, those areas need to be held off and protected, because if some of these pathogens or viruses leak out of there, then we could have some, detrimental effects in the region and worldwide, I guess.
Censorship of Western media has not bypassed the Ukrainian conflict. The largest American technologies companies, independently from the agenda, promoting anti-Russian content and blocking the accounts of Russian journalists criticizing the action of the West. Do ordinary Americans and Europeans really not notice how they become the subject of manipulation by the media?
I think that they didn't notice in the beginning, but there's people that think that it's censorship, and there's people that think that it needs to happen. Like a large portion of the West is supporting this massive censorship of what they consider pro-Russian narratives, and it's a lot of it is the establishment liberal, the liberal establishment here in America, who thinks that everything that counters that doesn't parrot the narrative coming out of the White House is makes you a Putin puppet. But last week we even saw that the censorship has spread to independent outlets like DuckDuckGo. The CEO of DuckDuckGo, Gabriel Weinberg, had tweeted out last week that the DuckDuckGo, the anti-censorship, pro-privacy platform, would now be censoring search results that they deemed to contain misinformation. And being that misinformation and disinformation are entirely subjective, and being that what was yesterday's misinformation is today's fact, this opened up a lot of people's eyes to the heavy-handed censorship that now is expanding into these independent, once privacy supporting outlets like DuckDuckGo.
In a private conversation, you told me about your friend journalist who had some situation on Twitter. Would you tell our viewers and readers, please, what happened to her?
Yeah, so actually she was just the subject of a New York Times article over the weekend. Rachel Blevins.
Oh my God, they made it so big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was, I guess the New York Times may have tried to make it look like it was Russia's fault, but it was, the RT America, like, largely closed down their operations in Washington, D.C. and laid off everybody in there. And she was, Rachel used to be a writer and editor here at the Free Thought Project. And she left in 2019 and went to RT, where she flourished over there. And never once has Rachel ever been told by Russia or anything like that to cover Russia in a positive light or spread any type of propaganda. She was free to cover whatever she wanted over there. They were never told to put out any type of propaganda like that. And that's what's important, but it doesn't matter. It's called Russia today. So naturally that was the first place to go down, and or the first outlet, right, or whatever, to go down and be largely censored across all of West, including blocked entirely in Europe. I believe you could still watch RT on YouTube and access the website here in the United States, but over there it's no,
not anymore. Not anymore, unfortunately.
Oh, is RT.com down now for good in the United States?
Not only RT, but all Russian news channels, publishers, any type of sources, everything is blocked on YouTube. So we technically lost an opportunity to put out the news to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's what this is. It's the death of discourse is what we're seeing. And conflicts aren't resolved by one side being able to scream at the top of a mountain without anybody questioning them. Conflicts are resolved with peaceful discourse. Exactly. And when one person controls that narrative, then we have a much larger problem.
So back to Rachel.
Yeah. So Rachel, that she was laid off. I guess it was about 10 days ago from RT and everybody else that at that place, Lee Camp. There was a bunch of people who, had hundreds and hundreds of videos that they had been making for the last 10 years, working that, these long careers at RT. And then all that's just wiped off the internet in one day. I know that YouTube purged all that last Friday. I guess that's what you're talking about. I was under the impression that RT was still allowed on there, like their live stream or whatever, which I saw recently, but I guess not. But yeah, so, you know, like Rachel was attacked, that she received so many death threats, and she had never once reported on Russia, like over there, like this. She was an American correspondent and reported on American issues that affect Americans, and never once was a mouthpiece for Putin or anything. But on Twitter, she got, and just social media in general, after this this move was made by the West to demonize all Russian media. Twitter labeled her account as a Russian media asset. And then, you know, she was flooded with hate mail and death threats. And there was a large group of people even calling the university which she graduated from in Texas and demanding they retract her degree. I mean, this is crazy. Like, these people are like begging to be censored and begging for one voice to control the entire narrative, which, as I stated, is entirely against any principles of a free society and will only end badly for everybody involved.
Do you think the NATO countries and the United States have begun to realize that because of their failed policies, the lives of thousands of civilians in Ukraine will be like hell in the next few years?
Yes, there's going to be a lot of rebuilding left to be done because some civilian targets were hit, and it sucks for everybody involved. And yeah, it's going to take years to rebuild. And but I know that, like, Russia has already been talking about the great rebuild after this conflict is over, and hopefully they stick by that, and they go, you know, if they do offer, you know, aid to try to build all this back up.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you that you found time for me again, and for to tell what is really happening, what you see in United States, what you get in United States, because we know what happens with the information and how all fake news and fake pictures and video going on around. Thank you for sharing your opinion, and we stay in touch and have a blessed day.
Awesome, Mira. Thank you. I'm glad we got to reconnect.